So it's the middle of the night on Friday. It's almost Saturday, and here I am trying to get something together for you for Saturday. Now, there are two things that I did want to talk to you about today, and neither of them have proved to be worked through enough or suitable. So what I thought I would do is go through the way I manage my accounts and my money, because there are quite a lot of new viewers, and there was one viewer in particular on my last video who said they found it a little bit confusing about the number of accounts that I mentioned. Now, I have actually done a video about this before, and I will try and find it and link it at the top of the page, because there were quite a lot of diagrams I drew for that video, and that might help those of you who are new to this channel and don't understand the many and different accounts I mention when I'm doing a budget allocation video. But I will try and talk it through, and I will try and simplify it. I do know that there are areas of the financial structure that I've put in place to manage my money that could be simplified by having things go directly from one account to another rather than going from A to B via C. But I've not actually got round to simplifying that yet, because I'm quite happy with the way it works, even though it may seem a little bit clunky. So, hello and welcome to the Frugal Granny channel. My name's Ali and I'm Frugal Granny. I'm a 65 and 3/4-year-old semi-retiree, and I'm trying to do the best on what I've got. I left my career ladder job last June, such as it was a career. I worked from, I think, about 2006 until June 2025. So I guess that's probably 19 or 20 years. So I've not had a full working life for an employer, but the 10 years before that, I ran my own limited company. And the savings and investments I made on the back of that small business enabled me and my now ex-husband to buy the property that I downsized from 10 years ago. And I did have a pension from that time, and I cashed that in to do the renovations on this property. So I just thought I would try and explain the way that I organise my finances. It will sound a little bit complicated to some people, but what you need to understand is that this is a system that has evolved over 1, 2, possibly 3 decades, though it did get simplified quite radically when my marriage fell apart. But again, it has now sort of grown and got more complicated over the last 15 years. So basically, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on diagrams this evening, but I'm going to try and explain it simply enough for you to understand it without that. Now, in the early days of my sudden singleness, I had, I would say, basically 2 accounts. I had my main current account in one bank, and I had another current account in a bank in a completely different banking group, because even 15 years ago, I was savvy enough to know that if one banking group went down, I wanted some of my money to be with a different banking group. And yes, I do know that there are guaranteed limits these days. I think it was 80,000 at one point, and it's now 100,000. But I still have always been a girl who doesn't want to put all her eggs in one basket. So I started out basically with one current account, which I call my main account, and then I had the account with another bank, which I call my utilities account, and that is the account into which every month, once I have paid myself my monthly allowance, I move £500. So I'm getting complicated before I've even started. The £1,400 living allowance is kept in my buffer fund, and that is again just a standard saver with the main bank that I bank with. And we can talk about the buffer fund again another day, but I'll link a video up there if you really want to know a little bit more about my buffer fund and how I try and smooth out 4 weekly payments and monthly payments so that I can pay myself once a month and I know what I've got coming in on the first of every month to last me for the whole calendar month, because that's the way I've operated all of my life, is on a calendar month basis, and I cannot at this stage move into operating completely on a 4 weekly basis, or even trying to operate on 2 bases at the same time. Right, so my £1,400 monthly allowance comes into my main account. That's where I've always been paid, into my main account. When I was at the office, my salary came into that main account. So I'm just trying to keep everything the same that I'm used to. And then maybe about on the 5th of the month, I don't like it to be too soon, just in case, the first of the month falls on a weekend and things get a bit weird. £500 goes by standing order to my other bank account, which is with another banking group, and that is my utilities account, and all of my utilities are paid from that account by direct debit, all of them. So once that money is moved, it's all automated. I don't have to think about it, and at the end of each month I go in there, check off that everything's been paid, make a log of the interest, any cashback that I've got, anything, just so that I'm on top of what's going on that account. And if anything needs changing for the next month on my spreadsheet, because I've had an email from one of the utility providers, I'll adjust that. And then when I get to the end of the next month, I will check that the right amount has come out. So that utilities account just sits off over there and does its own thing. I've set that up and it's just been doing its own thing now for a couple of decades, to be honest with you. And my main account, that is sort of the hub of everything. As I've said before, that's where my salary used to come into when I'd got my office job. And I think my supermarket salary actually comes into that account as well, though I do now wish it went into a different current account that I've got. Now, I do have another current account, and I call that my holding account, and it's an account that I sort of use as a shield against the world. And that's why I wish my supermarket salary was going into that one now. I mean, I could change it, but quite frankly, it is a hassle. And so I'm just leaving things as they are. And what I do is when my supermarket salary comes into my main account, I actually move it into what I call my holding account. And then I allocate the things from there. So yeah, basically, I have a holding account, a main account, and a utilities account. Now, the holding account came into being because for a long time I freelanced as a translator of Scandinavian languages and also a proofreader of manuscripts translated into English by Scandinavians who wanted their English polishing up, ready for publication. A lot of the time self-publication, but hey, it doesn't really matter. They wanted it to sound right. And the best way for me to have dealt with was to have any funds coming in paid into a separate current account, so that nobody ever had the account details of my main account. It all went into a separate account. So I suppose in a sense that account was almost like a business account, but it wasn't a business account. It was just keeping those dealings separate. And, now that's where if anybody, and thank you very much to the 2 people who generously gave me, well, three people actually, who've given me generous gifts through Buy Me a Coffee recently. Thank you very much. That is where that is where anything from Buy Me a Coffee will go into when I withdraw it from there. That's where my YouTube income goes into. That's where my 3 annuities go into. So anything that sort of comes in goes there and is held until I can deal with it and allocate it and put things in the right place. Yeah, so I've got those 3 current accounts. And then, yes, I have another one. It's called the Frugal Granny account. So when my YouTube income and any Buy Me a Coffee income comes into my holding account, I move that into my Frugal Granny account. And that's what I mean when I say things could be tidied up. In actual fact, it might have been better if I'd set up Buy Me a Coffee and YouTube for the money to go straight into the Frugal Granny account. But again, I don't want to tempt fate by trying to change things at this stage, and so I'm just leaving it be. So when any money comes into the holding account from YouTube or Buy Me a Coffee, I move it sideways straight away into Frugal Granny, and then from there I tax it, and the tax goes into a savings account, and I save that tax up all year until it's time for me to give it to HMRC, and it earns me a little bit of interest in the interim. And then anything that's left that is mine to spend or allocate gets allocated from the Frugal Granny account. Yes, I know it sounds complicated, but it works for me. And then I have my buffer fund account, which is just a standard saving account. And that is almost like a mirror of the Frugal Granny account, but for my personal income. So the annuities will come into my holding account, and I then just move them. I just move them sideways into my buffer fund. And then also what goes into my buffer fund is £800 of my supermarket salary. So that at the moment is going from my main account to my holding account to my buffer fund. And then my YouTube income comes into my holding account, and 300, I think, is it 300 or £325 of that then goes into the buffer fund. And that sits there and accumulates until the end of the month, and that's when the £1,400 moves from there to my main account, and that's what I live on for the month. So yes, it is a bit complicated, but it works for me. I'm not saying that you have to set your finances up like this, but it works for me. And I don't automate all that because I actually enjoy the discipline and control that it gives me of manually moving these things about. And then I change the font on my spreadsheet from orange to green once that transfer has been made, and I adjust the number on the spreadsheet for that particular month, and then I know it's been done, and I actually enjoy doing that. I know it probably makes me a little bit weird, but that's just the way I am. So yeah, I have a holding account, a main account, I have my utilities account with another bank, I have my Frugal Granny account, and I have my buffer fund account. And then, yes, there is another suite of accounts that sit underneath that, and they are technically my sinking fund accounts. Now, if you're with a bank like Monzo, you have one account and you can split it into pots, but the bank that I bank with doesn't have that facility, but it will allow me to open a set number of what they would call an online saver. So I have a suite of online savers, and each one is designated to one or two, sometimes one, sometimes two, sinking funds. And I pay a set amount of money from my monthly living allowance into those sinking funds every month. One's my emergency fund. Now, I have a repair and replace sinking fund as well, which also at the moment is with the other bank. I have a car sinking fund, which covers everything to do with my car apart from petrol. What else do I have? I have my firewood sinking fund, into which I put a monthly amount towards my firewood delivery, which used to be in September, but I'm now getting in the spring. I have a vet sinking fund for money that I might need to pay for any vet treatment that Bells might need. I have a well-being sinking fund for dental and optical bills, and also if I need a pedicure, and I do need to go and get one of those soon, that will come out of there. I'm just trying to think what other sinking funds I have. I'm sure there's more than just those. Let me just have a look. Yeah, I have an annual expenses sinking fund as well, and that involves me putting money aside every month towards my house contents and buildings insurance, the cleaning of 2 chimneys for my wood stoves, the servicing of my boiler, my internet security, and my ancestry.co.uk subscription, which I have for the 6 months over the winter when I'm not out doing my garden. What else do I have? Yeah, that is about it. And then I have another savings account where I keep my personal savings. So yeah, I've got quite a lot of bank accounts, but they're there for a reason. Yeah, and there is also, I forgot to say, the tax account. The tax account, actually, I do put the tax in the same account as the annual expenses. Because it is an annual expense technically. Now you might say, why don't I just put all of these things in one account? Well, with the bank that I bank with, you get a higher interest rate if you put your money in a limited withdrawal savings account. So all of these savings accounts will allow me to make, I think, 3 withdrawals, and I can retain the high interest rate. But the minute I make a 4th withdrawal, the interest rate goes down to the same rate as a standard saver, which is not very much, to be honest with you. So I have as many of these bank accounts as I possibly can, and I tailor them to how many withdrawals I think I will be making so that I don't exceed the number of withdrawals that will reduce the interest rate on those accounts. So that's why I have that many bank accounts there. Now, just to make things even more complicated, I also have a monthly saver. Now that is a bank account where you can put in, I think there are 2 different levels of saver I can have. One you put, I think, £250 a month into, and another one you can put £400 a month into. Now, I don't actually put that amount of money into them. What I'm doing is circulating money from my other savings account. I'm drip feeding it into those monthly savers to get the enhanced interest rate at the end of the year. So that, yes, there's another two bank accounts that I've got. And then, of course, like most people my age, I have an ISA. So, I mean, I've already lost count of how many bank accounts that is, but they're all on my spreadsheet. They get checked every week. They get checked every month. And no, it is not a bother. I actually enjoy doing that. Yes, I do budget and look after my money carefully because I have to. There really isn't terribly much to spare. But even when I was married and the income that I was dealing with was 4 times as much as what I'm dealing with at the moment, I still looked after it in very much the same way that I do now. And I think even if I'd had 40 times as much, I still would have looked after it in the same way, because I like to know what's coming in. I like to know what's going out. I like to know I'm getting the best deal. I like to know I'm making the most interest. I like to know that my savings are growing, that my money is as safe as it possibly can be. So I don't think it would matter to me how much money I had. I think I would still be budgeting. And I just think about this in relation to some of the large organisations I've worked for before working in retail for a supermarket, and watching the way that they deal with money and resources. They all have budgets. Every single department or facility or directorate has a budget. Every director or department head, etc., has to stick to that budget and report on that budget every year. And that is because it is an efficient way of working. It makes sure that money goes in the right place. It makes sure money goes on the things that it is intended to go on. It controls excess spending. And and I think if I had more money than I had, I would still budget, because I've seen the way that larger organisations deal with their money in a responsible way to meet the aims that they have. So anyway, that's probably not really helped anybody at all. But yeah, I would say if you really, really want to see it in diagrammatical form, I will link that particular video at the end of this one. But yeah, I know I run a complicated system, but then I think my brain is pretty complicated anyway. I work a system that works for me, and I'm not trying to sell it to anybody else. I'm not. I have developed this because it serves my purposes, and I think anyone who wants to sit down and budget needs to find a way of constructing that budget and physically managing their money that works for them and the way that they think. I do remember the older gentleman who introduced my ex-husband and I to budgeting. He had one account and he kept everything in a big handwritten ledger, and everything had its own column. I don't know what that sort of accounting is called, but I do remember sitting there thinking, looking at that and thinking, I'm honestly not sure I could operate like that. Though having said that, that is how I started out. I started out with an exercise book and multiple columns, each drawn with the width of a ruler, in which I listed the balance of the category of item that was heading that column. So I'd put the transaction in, the amount, and then I would debit or credit the relevant column, and yes, there would be a total box at the bottom right. And I suppose essentially my spreadsheets have evolved from that. Except I don't use multiple columns anymore. I use multiple accounts, but it works for me. And all I would say is, if you want to manage your money effectively, you need to find a system that works for you. There really isn't anything else to say, but I hope that makes things a little bit more clear, especially when said in the semi-darkness of the midnight hours. Anyway, so I'll see you on Monday for Magazine Monday, and hopefully we'll have something a little bit lighter to talk about, something a little bit less complicated. But anyway, thank you for listening. And I think if you want a clearer explanation, then go to the video that I actually made about this that includes all the diagrams, and that will totally send you over the top. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye for now.